When I was in ministry in Puerto Rico, there was a rather austere pastor who asked me one morning, "Do you always have to begin a sermon with how you feel?" I think I said, "Yeah, I always do. I'm feeling that today. The new folks that have come here, the wonderful celebration of children with Lisa, and all of you here, all of you that will be listening later or whatever, bring a joy in my heart that is the platform under which the Lord's word is going to begin to speak. You know that I love preaching, and I love especially preaching about, amen. Thank you, Elizabeth. Preaching about the Beatitudes. One time over the cycle, it comes back every 3 years, I found myself with an image of the Beatitudes, and it was a trapeze. I later had to think, what did that image bring? What was it? Some years ago, there it is. Some years ago, there was a group of brothers, of artists in the trapeze, and one of them could swing by his knees and turn, as he swung out, he would turn 4 times before he grabbed the hold of his brother, who was swinging by his knees in order to make it to the other side. As I read the Beatitudes, I want you to think of this image. But I also want you to be aware that the familiar, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," was rendered in a very different way by the New English Bible. That first beatitude went like this: "Blessed are those who know their need of God." Totally different, apparently. I used to think that what poor in spirit means you got stuff, but you're detached from it. It was suggested that this is not what it means. To be poor in spirit means to be radically, radically poor. We couldn't do anything to make us come alive. Pure, gratuitous gift. Now that's poverty. To be totally, in your very existence, depending upon God. Amen, Elizabeth. Depending upon God. So where does the trapeze come in? You will notice in all of the Beatitudes there is sort of a swinging out. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. As we experience the gift, and not to hold on to it. If in a moment of fear, the brother that decided not to swing 3 times or 4 times around and then grab a hold of his brother, he would be just dangling in fear, not very attractive for all the people down below who might be looking and saying, "What happened?" So when you are poor in spirit, it also means you let go and you trust that somehow God is going to grab on to you. Now that may come in many different kinds of ways. It may come in a gesture of love, of kindness, of being the light, as we'll read in this gospel and as we heard earlier. It will come when you experience even the rejection of somebody else. And I want to speak about a religious woman later who had that to an extreme degree. But I want to come back to that after I just read this powerful gospel. But just be aware that each of the Beatitudes is a moving out, has kind of a, you might say, a negative tone to it. But then what happens when you get to the other side? So it's from the 5th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. Begins with verse 5. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall possess the earth. They will possess the earth. The meek people. The people that are not patsies. That word meek has a number of different variations in our understanding. But meekness means humility, deference, wonder, all kinds of wonderful qualities. And they possess the earth because they know that it belongs to all of us. What you possess in your house, the 50 by 100 lot, or wherever that is, you own it. Do you really? You really own the lot that you have? Yeah, legally and things. But when we see the whole earth as belonging to all of us, not exploiting it, then we all experience that we possess this earth. There was a religious woman who was in ministry for many years in Brazil. And as you may know, a lot of the quality of the air we breathe comes from the rainforest in Brazil, which is being deforested because somehow the industry of putting cattle and grass rather than the trees seems to be good for that. But it was me displacing the peasants who were farming and doing things. And there was a sister who was not liked by the people that were in power. Not the government power, but the foresters and so on. And two of them came up to her one day, and she knew what was going to happen. And one of them asked, "Do you have a weapon on you?" She said, "No." And she knew what was about to happen. And she took out her Bible and said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." She was shot in the abdomen, shot in the back, 4 shots in the head, dead. And all of those people have been subsequently prosecuted and convicted, and they're in jail. Little coda to that. But here's a woman who was not afraid to die. She was willing to let go of the trapeze and trust that the energy of her gift of kindness and goodness would prevail. And she said at one time, well before her passing, she said to the state senate of Brazil, "Have you ever heard a monkey sobbing in pain as his trees are being burned? Compassion for every creature on this earth. We all belong to each other. And it's so powerful when we just let that happen." The next beatitude. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness or for justice, for they will be filled. The very hunger is the filling. Food doesn't fill us. We're going to get hungry again. But if you're hungry for justice, so important in our world today that there be justice. And if you're hungry for that, you'll be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Kindness given, kindness received. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. If your heart is pure, it's transparent. You have nothing to block the vision of being in touch with God. You will see God. Amen, Elizabeth. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. Salt brings zest to food. If you are the salt of the earth, you will bring zest, life, joy, energy, all the kinds of things that make God's kingdom here on earth flourish and grow. Zest. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Good deeds, loving expression, kindness, inviting people to come to see what they might experience, because I remember in my first sermon here, I was saying something, there are like 400,000 people who live within 5 miles of this church. Think we could scoop up a couple of hundred to fill this church? They're there, and it's my hope that our guests this morning are experiencing something that makes this worthwhile for them in case they need something. They need community. They need friends in the Lord. They need a spiritual connection. It's here. That's what fills me with joy. It's here. Doesn't matter the numbers right now, but one at a time, if we're kind and faithful and exuberant and enthusiastic about what could take place here on a Sunday morning, it will grow. Pandemic notwithstanding, it will grow. There's a poet by the name of Hafiz, who was a Persian poet from the 14th century. He's trying to look for metaphors about the love of the Creator. And he writes, the earth would die if the sun stopped kissing her. He says, even after all this time, the sun never tells the earth, hey, you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the entire sky. So my brothers and sisters, as you read and reread these Beatitudes and all of the Sermon on the Mount, be encouraged to know that when Jesus speaks through the medium of Matthew, that community that was gathered around decades after Jesus walked before the crucifixion, there were remembrance stories, there were phrases that they stitched together into what came to be the Gospels, maybe in 80 A.D. or so for Matthew. But when we experience them as though for the first time, and hearing it in public, hearing it here, it's different than hearing it online. It just is. It's okay. We had to do it for a couple of years because of the pandemic. But there's nothing quite like looking at the faces of those that I'm preaching at. I gave a couple of sermons in the pandemic when the church was empty, and I would kind of crank up the awareness that there's people out there maybe following it right now or later. There's nothing quite like the human physical bodies that are here. Bring them on, folks. Bring them on. Amen? Amen. Amen. I'm going to close with a prayer that I learned in grammar school from John Henry Cardinal Newman, from the very, very powerful philanthropist and bishop and cardinal in the 19th century. Dear Jesus, help me to spread your fragrance everywhere I go. Flood my soul with your spirit and life. Penetrate and possess my whole being so utterly that my life may only be a radiance of yours. Shine through me and be so in me that every soul I come in contact with may feel your presence in my soul. Let them look up and see no longer me, but only Jesus.